Welcome to Insanity Fair. This is the fourth and final part of my series on competitive consumerism. Although I will probably do some talks about particular aspects of this theory in future. However, I'd like to wrap up, so let's start by just quickly reviewing the position that I've set out so far. The first thing that I said is that I think that there is a basis in instinct for this development, namely competitive consumerism, the dominant ideology of the world now, I believe, the one thing that unifies humanity. Because there's an instinctive need to consume, of course. I will consume some coffee. And also that people naturally want to compete with their neighbours, their family, their in-group. Groups of people want to compete in various ways. And so uniting these is a natural development in a way. The effect of this on society we've looked at, the way that society then organises itself to accommodate this need that people have, and also we've looked at the kind of objects which become the target of this behaviour, objects which have a lot of very trivial differences, ideally, so that people can they can compete in very fine gradations, because they're basically indulging in mass behaviour. Okay, now what I'd like to talk about today, and I think this is really the purpose of all of this argument, is to lead here, is that people themselves are changed. People are affected by this behaviour, individually, but largely because it's a mass behaviour, and so it's something that affects people, affects huge masses of people altogether in consistent ways. And there are two aspects to this. The first one I think is rather obvious, but we will go through it anyway. That is that people devote themselves to this mass consumption, and so they all become the same. We looked at the mass shopping for clothes, for example, in those big sweatshop operations, and these same clothes are sold probably not all over the world, but all over Europe, all over North America, I'm sure. Yeah, you can go anywhere, you'll get the same shop selling the same clothes, or as close as makes no difference. And so that means that all over the world there are people who a generation ago, perhaps certainly 2 generations ago, would have had quite different cultures, quite different expectations about clothes, for example. And now they all want the same things, and they're all there trying to decide whether they want this particular faded denim look shirt or that faded look denim shirt, and trying to decide which one is going to make them win, which one is going to make them appear to be more in tune with fashion, when fashion is something that is decided by the manufacturers of these goods, and the success of their attempts to gull the public into believing that their particular commercial operation is the more fashionable. So there's this homogenization of humanity, so that you can take people from different countries. You can't even tell the difference anymore in Europe, certainly, which country people are from. Even if there are physical differences, you know, even if people are blonde or black haired, lighter or darker in complexion, even if they look as if they might be African or Asian or whatever it is, you don't know for a fact that they are, because they could well be people who've been living, you know, they could be Chinese people who've been living in Norway, they could be Africans from Rome, you can't tell. And increasingly they're interchangeable. They're wearing the same clothes, they're doing the same things, they're listening to the same music, they're watching the same sports events, and they're just the same. Okay. Now that, of course, is a fairly obvious conclusion. But I think that's just one half of the picture, because the idea that I'd like to introduce is that people actually turn themselves into the objects of consumerism. That's the aim of it. And in order to do that, you need to make a big effort, but it's something that can be achieved. The effort involves dressing yourself head to toe in recognizable branded goods, or no, not necessarily branded, that's going a bit... Sorry about that, I had to change the card in the camera. Where was I? Yes, a lot of fashion goods are not actually branded. You know, they, as I said, you know, you might have two faded denim shirts. They look different, but they're identifiable as something fashionable to people. And you know, if you wear a watch, it's got to be branded. It's got to be something that makes a fashion statement. Your shoes, everything about you. But then also, more subtly, your behaviour and your tastes, the music that you listen to. That's one thing. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to listen to the same music. That would be an overstatement. The thing is that you have to listen to culturally acceptable branded music in order to fit into this. So, you know, there are all kinds of weirdos who listen to all kinds of peculiar music, but they're basically left out, because you've got to be listening to something which is within the norms of the consumerist masses. And so, you know, what's an example? Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber is hugely successful. Obviously, you know, very talented, very attractive person, but a lot of people absolutely hate him. And so liking Justin Bieber is acceptable. Also hating Justin Bieber is acceptable. But if you hate Justin Bieber, then you've got to have someone else that you put in his place. And you know, it could be anybody, but you're still participating. And you know, what else? Holidays very important. You know, people go on all these holidays, they go to all of these exotic locations, but the vast majority of people, when they go on holiday, they just do the same thing. You know, they go to the beach, they go to the swimming pool, they go and do some shopping, and they go to clubs and dance, and it doesn't really make any difference whether it's in, you know, in France or in Goa or in Egypt or wherever it is. You know, the experience is the same but different, and so you can boast. And that's a bit like having a car, you know, or a watch, because of course it's the and clothes to some extent. A very important part of the competition is just how much money you've spent on it. And you know, we can't pretend that that's not an element. But that, you see, is like putting a price tag on yourself. You've made yourself into this consumer item, and who are the customers for this? Other people, the other people that you know. you're putting yourself in a shop window and you're saying, buy me, consume me. Hmm? And one way, obviously, that people do consume each other is through sex, and particularly through the kind of anonymous, this hooking up phenomenon, where obviously largely over the internet now, people just look at photographs, read the advertising blurb quickly, and decide, yes, I'm going to consume this person. They meet, they just exchange enough information just to confirm, the photo isn't completely misleading, that the text isn't a total lie, that yes, that people are fitting within this same universe, and then there's this consumption. But that's just one example. I mean, the thing is that more generally, that it's all human interaction is now operating like this. Not all, no, that's an exaggeration. But when people interact in daily life, everybody believes, this is the paradox, everybody believes that they're different. And they are different because this woman has chosen to have, this blonde streak in her hair, and another one has got maybe red streaks or no streaks or a different haircut, but they're all in this same universe. That different shoes, different everything is different, because that's the basis of it, that you are making choices all the time, but the choices are all about trivial things that don't matter. And so this is the condition of humanity that is arising. People who are at one level all the same. You look at people, as I said, you can't tell where they're from, they're all, more or less the same. Like consumer products themselves, like pop music, for example, it's becoming all very similar, very much the same kind of thing, but it's all different. It is. There are different faces, there are different words, different titles, different photographs that you can look at, different videos. And so people also, they're becoming more and more highly differentiated, but with differences that mean less and less. And so you won't find people with, radically different opinions, really, except that they might feel extremely strongly about whether they like Justin Bieber or not. They might feel extremely strongly that one brand of shoes is better than another. But they won't, then less and less likely to have real opinions about real stuff that really matters, because that hasn't been commercialized. And so people end up in this sort of self-imposed commercial condition. Now, on the one hand, they're slaves of the corporations that manufacture the goods that they consume, including the cultural goods. But in a way, also, they're totally free, because this is all the freedom that people want. And this is the reason, ultimately, I suppose, that it is this particular way of life, this competitive consumerism, which has taken over everywhere. It gives people just enough freedom. The freedom to buy this shirt or that shirt, to listen to this song or that song, to watch this football match or that football match. And the fact that everybody is just trivialized obviously doesn't matter to the people involved. I think it makes human interaction easier, actually. Certainly the cultural differences which act as barriers to people are reduced, much reduced. I should have a conclusion. What would my conclusion be? I suppose my conclusion is that this makes progress just about impossible. Thank you.